Welcome everybody to this week's Dissecting Design. We got a very fascinating for you this time. We're going to be taking a look at, I guess we could call it a torture simulator here, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. He is the creator of the game QWOP, and this is a very fascinating study into game development and the idea or the concept of what makes a video game work. And if the game will get philosophical about the discussion, so can we. Now, because this game is not built around levels or any kind of structure like that, we're going to probably not have as many cuts this time around, but any progress I make will probably be entirely unintentional. But let's load up the game, and we'll talk a little bit about what makes this game so special. Alright, welcome to the world of Getting Over It. As you can see, we are a man in a pot right now with a hammer. Our job is very simple. Get over an impossibly big mountain. But the catch is how we control. What you see right now on the screen is that little circle near my hammerhead is the mouse. And I can only control him by moving the hammerhead and letting physics do their job. Not exactly the most elegant way of moving around.
There's no feeling more intense than starting over. If you deleted your homework,
there's our
the day
friend
before
Bennett.
it was due, as I have, or if you left your wallet at home and you have to go back after spending an hour in the commute. If you won some money at the casino and then put all your winnings on red, but it came up black. If you got your best shirt dry cleaned before a wedding and then immediately dropped food on it. If you won an argument with a friend and then later discovered that they just returned to their original view, starting over is harder than starting up. If you're not ready for that, like if you've already had a bad day, then what you're about to go through might be too much. Feel free to go away and come back. I'll be here.
Thank you, Bennett. So, failure is a major part of getting over, and you'll see why as we start to climb this mountain. Now, for the sake of avoiding copyright strikes, we won't be hearing any of the amazing copyrighted music that has to do with failure in this game. But take note of this control scheme. Everything is physics-based, dependent on where the hammerhead is pushing. If I'm right here, I push down, we do a pogo. Go around like that, we do go around as so. Now, the trick about this game is that everything in terms of motion and controls is entirely based on you. There's no bosses, no achievements, at least in the normal sense. Everything's just about you trying to figure out what it is you're trying to accomplish and getting over it. Ooh, can we do this? I don't know, let's see. Of course, having to do this. No! Isn't that easy? And even if you've mastered this game, it's all about the muscle memory and just being able to get the feel right. And I'm sure many people have probably given up on this game right here. Come on. We did it. So if you watch very carefully, I'm just going to push against and we're going to move forward. As you can see.
Alright, thanks for coming with me on this trip. I'll understand if you have to take a break at any point. Just find a safe place to stop and quit the game. Don't worry, I'll save your progress, always. Even your mistakes.
Thank you, Bennett. So what he just described is a very important part of getting over it. The game always autosaves no matter where you are. Which means that any progress you make, if you lose it, you cannot recover it without having to repeat the game over and over again. And as we get further up this hellish mountain, things are going to become harder and harder.
This game is a homage to a free game that came out in 2002 titled Sexy Hiking. The author of that game was Jazuo, a mysterious Czech designer who was known at the time as the father of B games. And B games are rough assemblages of found objects. Designers slap them together very quickly and freely, and they're often too rough and unfriendly to gain much of a following. They're built more for the joy of building them than as polished products.
Oh no, that was semi flying off, and that's not good. Again, everything about the game in terms of its controls is done via the mouse, and there's not much in terms of complexity, other than you figuring
In a
out
certain
how
way,
physics
Sexy
work
Hiking
in
is the
this
perfect
game.
embodiment of a B game. It's built almost entirely out of found and recycled parts, and it's one of the most unusual and unfriendly games of its time.
Ooh.
In it, your task is simply to drag yourself up a mountain with a hammer. That act of climbing, in the digital world or in real life, has certain essential properties that give the game its flavor. No amount of forward progress is guaranteed. Some cliffs are too sheer or too slippery, and the player is constantly, unremittingly in danger of falling and losing everything.
And you'll be seeing that most likely in this video. Oh, don't want to do that. Oop.
Anyway, when you start Sexy Hiking, you're standing next to this dead tree that blocks the way to the entire rest of the game. It might take you an hour to get over that tree, and a lot of people never got past it. You prod and you poke at it, exploring the limits of your reach and your strength, trying
There's
to
also
find a way
not
up
a
and
good game
over.
to come back
And
to.
there's a sense of truth
Once you
in
lost
that lack of
after a few days, so you'll
compromise.
forget how everything
Most
works.
obstacles in video game worlds are fake. You can be completely confident in your ability to get through them once you have the correct method or the correct equipment or just by spending enough time. In that sense, every pixelated obstacle in Sexy Hiking is real.
Oh, boom.
Oh, you just lost a lot of progress. That's a deep frustration.
We'll be
real
talking about
punch in the
what
gut.
this progress loss means for game design in a few minutes as well. But as we're going through this, everything about this game is obviously hard-coded. And that's a major part of the appeal, and I think kind of the frustration, because depending upon your own skill at this game and how you figure out how things work, will ultimately determine whether you will succeed or you will never get up this mountain. Come on. Not only that, but a lot of this game is also dependent upon what mouse you're using, as well as the sensitivity that you're have access to. Come on, we made it. There we go. And this is pretty much the entire game.
The obstacles in Sexy Hiking are unyielding, and that makes the game uniquely frustrating.
This is great, though.
But
He
I'm not
basically
sure
takes care of
Jazro
half my
intended to
narration
make a
for me
frustrating
here.
game. The frustration is just essential to the act of climbing, and it's authentic to the process of building a game about climbing.
Come on.
A funny thing happened to me as I was building this mountain. I'd have an idea for a new obstacle, and I'd build it,
That ain't
test
gonna
it,
work.
and it would usually turn out to be unreasonably hard. But I couldn't bring myself to make it easier. It already felt like my inability to get past the new obstacle was my fault
didn't work
as a
either.
player
Uh-oh.
rather than as a
Gotta be
builder.
careful.
Imaginary mountains build themselves from our efforts to climb them. And it's our repeated attempts to reach the summit that turns those mountains into something real.
Basically, once you start flailing around,
When
you're
you're
in
building
trouble.
a video game world, you're building with ideas. And that can be like working with quickset cement. You mold your ideas into a certain shape that can be played with. And in the process of playing with them, they begin to harden and
Hey.
set until they're immutable, like rock. And at that point, you can't change the world. Not without breaking it into pieces and starting fresh with new ideas.
come on. Get yourself up here. And again, nothing is really changing in terms of how I'm playing this game. Just what the obstacles that the game is presenting to me. Uh-oh. Can we do it? Can we do it? Come on. Hey. Hey. Gotta be careful here. Careful. Oh. And by the way, I can fling myself off to the left there, and we lose all the progress that I just did.
For years now, people have been predicting that games would soon be made out of prefabricated objects, bought in a store and assembled into a world. And for the most part, that hasn't happened, because the objects in the stores are trash. I don't mean they look bad or that they're badly made, although a lot of them are. I mean they're trash in the way that food becomes trash as soon as you put it in the sink. Things are made to be consumed and used in a certain context, and once the moment is gone, they transform into garbage.
Now, as you can
In the
see,
context of technology, those moments pass by in
physics of the
seconds.
game kind of get in the way of a lot of this.
Over time,
And it's just
we've
about you
poured
trying
more
to
and more
figure out
refuse into this
what
vast
it
digital
is you're trying to
landfill that we call the
accomplish within
internet.
these physics.
It now vastly outnumbers
But-
and outweighs.
I want to pause things here because I want to move on to our next section. I want to talk about why this game is so polarizing. And in fact, I'm going to turn off our friend here, and we're going to actually restart this game. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the difficulty curve and why it's so controversial. In fact, I can think of the perfect way to restart. I think you know what's about to happen, folks. Boom. And yes, this is a site that is very common in getting over it. But let's talk about what this difficulty means for this game and what it means for games in general next. Alright, welcome back. So, now that you've seen what getting over it is about and the risk of failure and punishment at all times, let's talk what this means in terms of difficulty design. Getting over it is the absolute perfect example of subjective difficulty. Everything about this game is designed to put no matter what the skill level of the player at 0 in terms of their knowledge and growth in this game. Due to how weird this control scheme is, no one's going to start this game and be amazing at it. I'm not even sure if the developer himself could beat this game easily. And that's a key part about this. Depending upon your own knowledge and understanding as it grows, will determine ultimately how hard or easy a subjective difficulty-based game is. Now, another major part of getting over it is the fact that the fail state is so extreme. This is basically an everything. According to my list or my hierarchy of fail states, you can at any time lose all your progress. And there are no abstracted elements in this game to compensate. You're either going to beat this game on your own merits, or you will never see the ending of it. And that can be tough for a lot of people to play. A few months ago, we had the whole controversy over Cuphead regarding its difficulty and being too exclusive to younger or new players. And I'm really interested to see if anyone writes an article like that about getting over it. Because this game is even harder, I would say. And I would say it's even harder than even something like Bloodborne or Dark Souls or anything else like that. Because there is... Oh boy, that ain't good. Because the margin of error is so small, and there is nothing here, oh god, that can compensate for it. While in a game like Cuphead, if I fail, I just restart the level where I was at, or start that boss fight. We fail here, we could lose minutes, if not hours, of progress. By the way, this is a whole new meaning to the word split focus when you're trying to play and talk at the same time. But, hey, that's a perfect thing to happen while we're talking about subjective difficulty and fail states. So is that. Let's pretend I'm doing that on purpose, folks. And this is why these kinds of games have such a high frustration factor to them. Right now, some good old copyright music would be playing, but we can't do that or this video will be struck down. Uh-oh. But each time we fall in this game, hopefully we're getting better at understanding what it is we're trying to do, which in turn will help us hopefully recover, because this is a game that's, again, it's all about you. If you can't learn or can't grow, you will never beat this game. Uh-oh. Can we do it? This is also a very strenuous game on your hand, too. Come on, mouse. Don't mess with me now. But a game like this is explicitly designed along these matters. Ooh. Can we do it? Alright, there's that. But as the game goes on, the risk or the growing fail state is going to grow as we get higher and higher and higher. And yes, it is possible to lose all your progress literally near the end of the game and have to start the whole thing over from scratch. Now, I bet a whole lot of people like that. But getting over it is very much akin to an Iron Man play of just about any strategy or roguelike. That the risk of failure is a part of the experience. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think this is going to work. And again, it's very hard to look at a game like this. For that very reason. Because even if you know what you're supposed to do, it's very easy to mess up because of how this game is played. I don't have a good feeling about this one, folks. But so far, I've lost count the number of times I've done this part. And it is still as hard as it was the first time. And again, there are no tutorials in getting over it either. You have to learn it all by hand here. And sometimes it feels like the physics are out to get you. Come on. Come on. Oh boy. How's your blood pressure doing there, folks? For those of you watching. Oh no. That ain't good. No. Boom. And yeah, that happens again a lot in getting over it. And even if you master this game, it can be up to sometimes the luck of the physics here. No. Like so. And it represents a very interesting idea of what it means to make a game, especially make a game in today's market. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut things, hopefully, once I make it back up, and we'll talk more about how it's very hard to find this as a game for today. Welcome back, folks. I won't tell you how long it took me to get back to this part. But let's talk about what makes this game a very philosophical discussion. Getting over it is not designed around any semblance of a modern video game. There's no levels, no checkpoints, not even a tutorial to explain to people what it is they're doing. The game itself was released on Humble Monthly as a free purchase, or I think part of that deal before being released on Steam a month later. And everything about this doesn't represent what we call a game for today. Control scheme is also intentionally obtuse. Uh-oh. And you would not make a game with a control scheme like this for today's market. It just isn't really done that well. Uh-oh. No! And that is what makes this very tricky, because a game like this, you would never see a AAA, or I would argue even most indie developers, try and make something this intentionally frustrating. Because a game like this is not supposed to sell today. Now, Ben himself commented in an earlier talk, or in earlier one of his little narratives, about that very topic. Most video games today are designed as a means of an enjoying experience, something that you're playing to get away from frustration. This game is very much the opposite of that in all aspects. Because even hard games today, like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and roguelikes, still feature accommodations for new players or to allow someone to learn this game. This, on the other hand, it's just all frustration. And the fact that it's all subjective base makes it even harder to talk about. And again, this raises a very interesting point. Is getting over it an example of or is it a bad example of a good game? Or a good example of a bad game? Because I could see it going either way, just due to what this game is trying to accomplish. Uh-oh. Oh, I know what's about to happen here. You're not fooling me again, buddy. And again, as you're seeing, nothing is really changing in terms of what I'm doing here. But again, it's what the difficulty is representing. Oh boy. That was very close. But I'm curious, for those of you watching this or who have had a chance to play it, what do you think? Is this a good video game? Could we even define it as a video game? Or actually, I think we can pretty much do that, but would you consider this a good game? Because this is a great example of somewhat of the contradiction of intent versus execution. This game was designed entirely like this. Ben Fai did not make a mistake when building this game. Everything that I'm doing is very much explicitly designed, oh boy, to be like this. So do we reward this? Do we punish it?
No.
He just said no, but I think there's more to it than that. But this is a very hard game to get a proper read on, just due to how polarizing it's going to be. Oh boy. I don't know about you, but if I do fall all the way back down again, I'm not restoring this. We'll just go back to the menu and finish up this dissection. Oh boy. Oh. Well, that was close, wasn't it? This is one of those games you can only laugh, I think, at it. Because if you start crying, you're never going to stop. Oh, mama. Woo-wee. We're having fun, right, folks? Everybody here is having some fun. But when it comes to this kind of game design, we really don't see it anymore. And we could argue for very good reason. Because who would want to risk making a game like this for the market? And if you saw up there, that's where we have to go. Now, whether we actually get there, that, my friends, is another story. Oh my god, this is actually a surprise. I never made it this far before. That's perfect. We're about to lose everything again, folks, and then we'll be going back to the menu to wrap up my thoughts. Oh, dear God. Ooh-wee. It just got real, folks. It just got very real in here. But again, a game like this, I'm going to stop for a second. This will give me a chance to calm down and talk. Games like this really aren't being made today for several reasons. One, it's just not marketable. And chances are, if this game didn't get the eye of many indie YouTube or many YouTubers and streamers, you wouldn't have heard of this. And I'm sure this is not going to be covered on most major game sites. But it's just a very interesting case of what it means to make a video game. And again, do you give a game like this a high score? It's a frustrating, cumbersome video game, but it was designed to be a frustrating, cumbersome video game. And what you're playing as here was explicitly meant like this. I am going to fall. There we go. You knew that was going to happen. And I don't know where we're going to get back there. Especially not in this video. And that's and as I was saying, that's the point about this. Because I don't know if this would be considered a good video game. Uh-oh. It was intentionally made like this, which is nice. But would you really want to make a game like this? Because that's the big question. Now, with that said, though, a few final questions, and then we'll go back to the menu for my final thoughts. Like, when it comes to games like this that are intentionally designed to be frustrating, would you consider this a cheap game? Because on one hand, again, you can lose all your progress like it's nothing. No, you don't. But it's entirely within the person's own understanding of the game to figure out whether or not they're going to be able to learn it or not. Oh boy. Oh, mama. That ain't gonna work. Because I would say that this is a harder game than even something like Bloodborne or the other titles released this year that are designed to be challenging, but there's still accommodation to it. This game doesn't have that, as you can plainly see. But before this turns into yet another play of getting over it, we're going to head back to the menu. I'm going to discuss some final thoughts. See you all in a second. Alright, so to wrap things up, and yes, I did fall all the way back down to the bottom. I don't know, getting over it is just a very interesting experiment in terms of design, and more importantly on the philosophy of what it means to make and play a video game. And I don't see this game winning too many Game of the Year awards unless someone wants to be very... I don't know what the term I want to use here. Maybe like a hipster over this game. But I think the problem I had with getting over is that, to me, if your game is designed to be intentionally frustrating, it doesn't work for me. It's the same reason why I didn't enjoy games like I Am Bread, Octodad, and probably a few other ones, and Surgery Simulator. The issue for me is that if the game is intentionally cumbersome, then it's not really me learning how to play this game. It's about trying to get around this kind of very weird and off-putting deficit. Like, for instance, imagine someone designing a car that intentionally puts the brake pedals on the dashboard and you have to push it with your hands. That would not work. That's not you trying to learn how to drive a car, that's you trying to drive some kind of crazy contraption. And that's what I have with this game. The fact that the controls are so intentionally designed this way, and of course, this game could have been built in any number of ways, but was explicitly built like this, does make it hard to really learn. And I think a lot of people are going to write it off just because of that. But this is such an interesting case in, can a game like this actually be marketable in 2017, or by the time, or in 1 month from now, 2018? And I don't think it is, and I'll be surprised if this game becomes a bestseller outside people buying it just for the novelty factor or to stream it and record a few rage videos. I don't know if I don't think I'm going to be able to get over it anytime soon. But for those of you watching this, can you think, like, do you feel like this is a game that's cheap? Because I don't think it is. Again, it's intentionally designed this way, so nothing is hidden from the player, but it is frustrating. And whenever we talk about games being cheap or frustrating, we get to a very narrow line in terms of someone's willingness to keep going. When you play a game like Diablo or roguelike, the game is different enough on each time you play it so that it doesn't feel like you're wasting time or that you're starting back over again repeating it. But a game like this, it basically flies in the face of all conventional game design by the fact that when you fail, you are literally going to repeat everything that you just did again and again and again. And I'm rooting for this game, but I don't see it being an example of challenging game design. To me, a challenging game would be something like Super Meat Boy or The End Is Nigh, or anything like that where you become one with the control scheme. The game's UI and controls are so fine-tuned that you can forget all about it and concentrate 100% on the game. With something like this, you really can't do that. You're going to have to use the mouse or the trackpad and deal with crazy physics and your hammer getting stuck in things and whatnot. And we'll have to see whether or not this trend continues. But for me, this is going to wrap up this week's Dissecting Design. And while I enjoyed it, I don't know, like I said, if something like this can really be seen as an example of modern game design or even retro game design. But again, for those of you watching this, whether you have played it or not, I'm curious what you think about this game, both from a design standpoint and what it does in terms of the fail states and its subjective difficulty. Earlier this year, I played the game Snake Pass. That was also another game built on subjective difficulty of the player's mastery of the snake. But I think I found that one more enjoyable than getting over it, because the controls weren't explicitly designed, but they were still finely tuned within the confines of the gamepad. This, again, it feels like it's just cumbersome to make a point. But with that said, thank you so much for watching this week's Dissecting Design. New ones will be going up on Mondays. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe. If you'd like access to our private Discord channel as well as voting privileges, check out patreon.com/gwbicer to find out how. And for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. If you'd like to suggest games for me to cover or topics to talk about, let me know in the comments below. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on design, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the Game Wisdom Patreon, you can find us on there on patreon.com/gwbicer. $1 will get you into our private Discord channel where we talk game topics and more. $5 will get you voting privileges for any major event, including the Saturday Night Grab Bag, Patreon-funded goals, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy more videos here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.